and welcome back to Book and Page. So we are on to part 7 of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which is the last part, technically, of part 3 for my translation, the third day to our exchange game with the Lord of the Castle, where Gawain is staying. So, as always, we'll start with a quick summary of what actually happened in this section, and then start talking about things in a little more depth. So, like I said, it is day 3 of our exchange game, and like always, the Lord and his nobles are up at dawn to get down with the hunting. And they're headed off, and the hounds catch scent of a fox. Yes, the Lord and his men spend most of the day hunting a terribly clever and fast fox. So, what's Gawain doing this entire time? Well, he's in bed. Turns out he's not sleeping very well because he's probably going to die the next day. I think we all might sleep a little rough, considering that. So he's actually a bit surprised when the lady of the castle wakes him up, all decked out. I wonder what she could be dressed up for. Is it a seduction? So we start off the exchange with our first kiss, and then the lady says basically, "Why don't you love me? Would you please love me? Love me please." And, well, Gawain just kind of tells her that he's really not looking for anything at all right now. He doesn't have anybody else, that's not the concern, but he's just not interested. And this is sort of interesting because Gawain definitely knows that he is sort of done being able to walk this balance line. It is either basically get with the Lord's wife or outright reject her and risk being rude about it. So Gawain's doing his best, but he has to make his own decision here, which is, sorry, I'm just not into you. Also, I'm probably going to die tomorrow. So, interestingly enough, the lady is definitely disappointed by this, and she sure lays on the guilt quite a bit, but she does seem to accept Sir Gawain's choice on this. So she basically says, well, I mean, I'm heartbroken for the rest of my life, but okay, give me a love token to remember you by. Which Gawain says, like, I don't have anything worth giving to you, and also, it probably isn't a good thing to have a love token from me, considering you're married. And so the lady's like, fine, I will give a love token to you. So she starts by offering him a ring, but he refuses this. And she says, oh, it's probably because it's like super expensive. That's why you're feeling like this. No, again, Gawain just doesn't want both of them to get murderized because the Lord doesn't like his wife sleeping around. So, when he doesn't take the ring, she offers him her girdle, which is basically a belt. And it's a lovely green girdle, which Gawain again starts to refuse, and the lady says, oh, it's probably because this is like super cheap. But actually, it's magical, and it can protect you from mortal blows. And suddenly Gawain is thinking really hard about this, and the fact that he's supposed to die tomorrow. So, temptation is too much. Gawain accepts the belt, and the lady makes him swear that he won't tell her husband, because she's married. Gawain agrees. He's a little more concerned about, facing the Green Knight at this point in time. So he accepts the girdle and agrees to hide it from her husband. She, at this point in time, has kissed him twice more, and then heads off. Gawain decides to get ready for the day, and heads, in fact, to confession. Confesses everything, gets absolved, and then heads off to enjoy the rest of the last day that he thought he was going to be alive in a much more cheerful mood because he might actually survive this adventure now. Who would have thunk? Meanwhile, the Lord has finally headed off the fox, and between himself literally slashing at it with a sword and his hounds, they managed to catch and kill the fox. It ain't much of a prize. Prior to this point in time, the dogs have been getting some of the good meat as rewards. Now they get some pats on the head because, hey, we just have one fox to skin. And thus we also don't have the big butcher scene that we've been having for the past couple of days. Well, the hunt didn't go so well, but they head on home, and oddly enough, instead of letting the Lord start the exchange, Gawain himself steps right up, kisses the Lord 3 times, and basically says, "Ta-da, I've given you everything I've gotten today. Yay, it was a good game." And the Lord's just like, "Well, those kisses were good. Sorry, I only have this fox pelt. Yeah, nah, end of this sort of, didn't go well for me. Sorry about that." And Gawain's like, "It's fine, it's great. We've exchanged everything, don't worry about it." So they end the night off, originally quite cheerfully, though perhaps a little sinister messaging on the side of the Lord, and then Gawain takes his tearful leave of the court before he heads off to bed, since he won't have a chance to do it in the morning. And everybody's a little sad, but Gawain sleeps better tonight because he might actually survive tomorrow. Yes, this is definitely an interesting third day, because the shift in tone is more than just the shift in the animal that Gawain and the lady are reenacting here. We definitely have that trickster fox type come in, with the lady going full out, "Don't I look pretty?" And then Gawain sort of, again, using his wits and his knowledge to walk that line that he's pretty sure is impossible now, yet somehow manages to escape with his tail intact. Well, that didn't quite happen with the wolf, now did it? The wolf. There's no wolf involved, the fox. The fox escapes for quite a while and gives the hunters quite a bit of trouble, not in the violent way that the boar did, but literally, again, escapes most of the hounds and most of the men. It is only the sort of quick thinking of the Lord that allows him to get in front of the fox, and he prevents it from moving enough that the hounds get involved, and then all his noblemen show up after everything's already done. So there is sort of this sort of delay idea with the fox that Gawain has achieved, but his mistake is thinking that he's successfully gotten out of this, because of his concern, of course, is being seduced by the lady. Well, he has effectively gotten out of that, and oddly enough, by being very directly honest with her that he's just not that type of knight. He's not looking for that type of relationship. And being, again, very clear that it's not that there's somebody else, it's not that she's a terrible woman, just it's not what he wants. And you can definitely get the sense that this was a test because the lady finally backs down here. While before she has been very insisting that this is what he should want. This is day 3, it's the end of the testing, the lady can finally just let him go. She does take a few parting shots to see if she can't trick him one more time, which is just to slather on the guilt there and make Gawain feel terrible because she's heartbroken now. The light has gone out of her life. She'll never love anybody else, and Gawain's just sort of like, again, this isn't appropriate for us. We can't do this. And again, by being honest about that, he avoids having to give her a love token. which would have implicated him even if it hadn't been true. But the narrator does say that this was a narrow escape for Gawain. There are a couple points throughout this that we really get the sense that he could have gone one way or the other. Things like, great peril threatened, should Mary not mind her knight. Wow. I mean, that is directly saying that Gawain is reaching his limit here about what he can actually withstand when it comes to this seduction. But he manages to avoid it. He thinks he's wiggled his way out, just like the fox probably often thinks that they've gotten out of the issue. In fact, we directly see this even before we are told about Gawain and the lady's encounter today. So we get quite a bit longer section of the hunt earlier in the day, because it actually moves directly into the lady showing up in Gawain's bedroom. It doesn't cut off at the end of the verse like it normally has. So we get a little more about the fox and how many times he thinks he manages to get away. So there's this one. At last jumps over a fence by a little ditch, creeps stealthily by the edge of a bush-covered marsh, thinking to escape from the wood and the hounds by his wiles. Then he came, before he knew it, to a well-placed station, where 3 fierce greyhounds flew at him at once in a rush. So literally, the fox thinks he's escaped, until he comes into exactly the type of trap he's been trying to avoid. Well, that is precisely what actually happens with Gawain here. He avoids the seduction trap to be led directly into what was probably the actual trap being set up the entire time, which is breaking the exchange game with the Lord with a token from his wife. So, he does not take the ring, but the real temptation is not a love token. The real temptation is, again, being able to actually survive this adventure. The moment the lady says, actually this girdle will help you avoid being killed by mortal blows, well, that's truly the real temptation, isn't it? Or at least it's that second one. It's that trap where you think the real temptation is what Gawain almost fell into, which is having a relationship with another man's wife, but it's a bait and switch. Gawain did not do this really terrible thing, but he did do this kind of bad thing because he wanted to survive. It's self-preservation. So when you look at it, it definitely looks like he's done the lesser of two evils here. He hasn't had a relationship with the wife. He is innocent of that. But his virtue, to us perhaps, is still being tested because he hasn't done everything that the Lord and he agreed upon. His virtue and his word are broken here. In fact, I mentioned that we've got this oddly sinister line from the Lord right at the end, which is, everything I ever promised you I shall readily give. Now this, of course, is coming from the Lord saying, I have agreed to send somebody to show you the Green Chapel, and I'll do that. But that is precisely not what he says. He can very easily say, I've agreed to show you the way to the Green Chapel, here's the dude that's going to do it. He says, everything I have ever promised you, I shall readily give. Which says there's more. It's more than just showing him the way to the chapel. And that should be a red flag to Gawain that he screwed up somewhere along the lines. But we also have to remember that it is not just a choice between two wrong things here. there is a third thing to be considerate of. The reason why the lady makes Gawain pledge that he does not tell the Lord about the gift is because she is implying she will be in trouble for it. And this is true in a lot of stories. The woman will get in trouble with her husband if there's any hint of anything happening. This could be a perfectly innocent gift, though the situation telling us that it's not. But it could be a completely innocent gift. But the Lord's word is still going to win out. The lady can say it was completely innocent. The knight can say it was completely innocent. But there are levels of belief when it comes to swearing one's word. And a lord is one of the highest. The ladies and the knights are further down. So if they have to swear in front of the court whether or not it was innocent or not, the lord's word is simply going to be taken more seriously than the ladies'. So Gawain isn't choosing between, hey, I didn't sleep with her, but I did take this so I could survive. He's choosing between, I didn't sleep with her, I took this so I could survive, and I shut up about it so she didn't get in trouble. So this is a much more complicated choice where there doesn't seem to be a winning answer. When you know the entire story, again, you know this has been a setup. The Lord is well aware of what his wife is doing. He's probably even instructed her to do it. So no, she wouldn't actually get in trouble if Gawain revealed the belt. But Gawain doesn't know that. He lives in a society where unfaithful wives are burned at the stake. Gawain is doing his best not only to help himself survive, but also help the lady to survive. He might have broken her heart, but at least he's not going to reveal that unfaithfulness to her husband. He thinks he's doing the right thing here. And while the Lord might be sounding a little sinister about his choices, the narrator gives us 2 points where he seems to be agreeing that Gawain is trying to do his best. Now, the first one is a very small one. It's actually second within the chronological story, but the narrator directly calls Sir Gawain the Good. And that is an epitaph he gives him. Gawain is trying to do the right thing here. He is trying to be virtuous, both for himself and for the lady that he might not have wanted to sleep with, but he also doesn't want to see her killed or hurt in any way. The other one, of course, is this scene that pops up again in the middle of a verse, but is very important overall. Okay. Then quickly to the chapel he makes his way, approached a priest privately, and besought him there to hear his confession and instruct him more clearly how his soul could be saved when he leaves this world. There he confessed himself honestly and admitted his sins, both the great and the small, and forgiveness begs, and calls on the priest for absolution, and the priest absolved him completely, and made him as clean as if the judgment were appointed for the next day. In the religious sense, Gawain has been forgiven for this moment with the lady. He has admitted it, and we can assume that that saying that he spoke honestly and admitted his sins, great and small, that he admitted everything. He confessed everything as is proper, and the priest absolved him. So the author here is offering a way out where we can see Gawain as being a still virtuous man because he has in fact been absolved by a priest. But the issue is the placement of this absolution. This includes all the sins that Gawain has previously done. I'm not sure, and again, I'm not super religious, so if anyone can clarify this, I'm relatively not sure that normal absolutions work in front, right? I'm not sure you can be absolved at confession for sins you have not yet committed. I think when you commit other sins, you gotta go back to confession. Now that's not fully true, I'm aware, because there were certainly points with the Crusades that they had priests come in who basically said anything you do on the crusade is for God and thus is not a sin. So there is, in some cases, the ability to sort of preemptively absolve you of any sins. I don't think this is the case. I do believe, because he has had to confess everything, that Gawain is forgiven at this point. But there's still the fact that he then needs to go on to complete the game with the Lord. He needs to lie and say the kisses were the only thing he got. And he needs to break his oath about the game by not handing over the girdle. He also needs to break his oath in regards to the Green Knight's game by taking the girdle and using it, even if he's not really supposed to. Though that one's a little questionable because the Green Knight was also aware that he would be fine. So if Gawain's aware that he's fine, then maybe that's just evening the playing field, and maybe that's how Gawain's taking it. But we get this absolution at a really odd place, which says that Gawain can still be good, but he's certainly not perfect. He might have been forgiven for previous sins, but he won't be forgiven for coming sins. And of course they really play it up by saying, like, judgment comes tomorrow, and you're just like, that's a hint. That is a big hint. But one of those odd ones again where religion and, like, folk culture, fae, magicalness are coming together, because judgment is coming, but it's not judgment of the Lord, it is judgment of the Green Knight, who seems to be some sort of fae creature. So it's this really weird placement of confession and absolution that makes Gawain think he's doing fine, but that's another trap he falls into, where he thinks, okay, I'm good, I can do whatever I need to now, which isn't really how it's supposed to work. You're not supposed to sin just because you're aware you can go to confession and be absolved for those sins. So Gawain very happily going to meet the Lord, knowing that he's breaking his oath to him. It's a little out of place. And Gawain seems to be a little nervous about it because he just, like, wants to get it over with real quick. Rather than waiting for the Lord to start the exchange, which he has been doing, Gawain, like, right away is like, here are the kisses I've gotten. Ha ha. Nice fox skin. I like it. Can we please end this now? Like, he seems to be aware that he's still making a bad choice. But in his own head, he's definitely choosing the lesser of two evils, because that stain on his virtue is on him, and it's not getting a woman killed by her husband. And he has gone to confession. He's admitted it. He knows it's wrong. Is Gawain okay from here? Well, he still has to go and face this trial. He might think he has a way out of it, but that doesn't mean that he can just avoid it. He still has to go into this really terrifying situation out of what has already been a deeply uncomfortable one. The poor man has suffered enough, I think. But some of the choices he's made in this last day are not easy choices, and I'm not sure we can easily judge him one way or the other. Sometimes I don't know why I've done this series, because I look so deeply into some texts that I really love, and they become such problematic pieces, not only by today's standards, and I certainly recognize I have a different frame that I am viewing things through, and different biases, but even by their own standards, this is not an easy question when it comes to courtly love and courtly virtue. Well, we've got 2 parts left. We're heading into the last parts of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and we're about to actually get back to that original game that we started this adventure with, now that this hunting exchange game has been completed. Or has it? I'm gonna keep reading, and I hope you do too. See you next time.